Today's presenter is Christina Stewart, Course Leader for Digital Marketing and Public Relations. Christina is going to share some insights into how to build your online brand identity using a range of digital channels. So I'll now hand over to Christina. Thank you, Christina.
So thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. I'm delighted to be talking with you all today about online branding for business. So before we begin, I'd just like to thank everyone for joining the webinar. It's absolutely my pleasure to be talking to you about branding. As Sarah said, I'm the course leader for our undergraduate degree in digital marketing and for PR at RGU. And I've lectured at RGU now for 6 years. And we have actually welcomed our first set of digital marketing undergrad students just last year, last September. And we really set up this course in response to the digital skills gap that we're currently experiencing both locally and on a global scale. Branding is my absolute passion. I'm currently undertaking a PhD examining the creation and management of brand identities in the Scottish whisky industry, focusing really on how social media in particular is used as a brand channel to engage with different stakeholders. And in the past, my research has focused on the Scottish textile industry, so looking at the role of country of origin and place branding to generate competitive advantage and communicate authenticity as well. So in today's webinar, we will be exploring the role and the value of online branding. And I hope to provide you with some inspiration as to how to build your business online in terms of visibility, credibility, and building your identity too. I think this is a really exciting time to be building your brand online. There's more tools and channels available than ever before. So let's make a start. And as Sarah said, happy to take any questions at the end of the session, or if even after the session any questions come up. You can see my email address on screen. Really happy for you to email me any follow-up questions. So today in modern culture, brand is often deemed more important than the product or service itself. And consumers and companies alike are willing to pay large sums of money to buy brands. For example, from a business perspective, just last year, LVMH, they bought Tiffany, the jewelry company, for $16.2 billion. And much of this is accredited to its strong brand equity. Quite often we talk about brands being ranked in terms of their value. And the technology industry, it continues to dominate the top ranking positions. Apple has remained in the top position with an unbelievable brand value of 260 billion, just over actually. And of course, like everything else just now, the COVID-19 pandemic has had an impact on brands, both in negative and positive ways. Unsurprisingly, brands like Netflix, Amazon, PayPal have experienced substantial growth during this time, and they've continued to gain in brand value. And according to the latest report by Forbes, Netflix has actually gained a colossal 72% growth. So of course, as customer lifestyles change and adapt, the brands that we use and customers use, they also change and evolve. And that's something that's really important to consider. Whether you're a household name or whether you're even a smaller, independent, more local business. And global brands, they do provide a good source of inspiration and a source of best practice in some cases as well, that SMEs can also leverage. And we're going to take a look at some of these tactics and how we can sort of maybe tap into some of these tactics that these bigger brands are using, even if we ourselves are possibly a smaller brand. But firstly, I just wanted to explain what exactly do we mean by brand? We probably all have preconceptions about what a brand is or what it isn't, and what actually constitutes a brand. You know, we possibly even have a favourite brand, one that we dislike or maybe even hate. But how exactly do we characterise brand? So despite the vast amount of academic and commercial attention awarded to brand over many years, there is still no universal definition. But there is a consensus today that brands are much more than just a logo or a name. And although they are still important brand elements that help customers identify and recognise the brand, today brands actually mean much more. Today they can be used as a tool, as a mechanism to establish meaningful relationships with their stakeholders. Two-way dialogue between the brand and the customer can be really valuable. It enhances trust, satisfaction, and ultimately loyalty too. And you can find many brands engaging in relationship building activities in online communities, especially in social media communities. It's the emotional value that brands hold in the minds of consumers that is increasingly recognised. And it's important to think about how consumers use brands to also build their own personal identities, especially in the world of social media. And today, you know, we're in what is commonly defined as the experience economy, whereby consumers, they actively seek out experiences. And this does align with the way in which we're seeing brand managers create and manage their own brands. They're also trying to create these rich experiences, often in partnerships with customers, with the aim of building long-lasting relationships. And we'll return to that point slightly later on. But this approach, it encourages repeat purchase, and in doing so helps secure the financial stability of the company. So before we move on to tactics, I'd like us just to look at a couple of definitions and just unpick these slightly to shed a bit more light on what actually is branding today. What does it look like? So I really wanted to share this interpretation of branding with you. It's one of my favourite definitions, and it's by Andy Rogers, who is now the creative director at his own digital brand agency called Number 252. They do a lot of really interesting and great work, mostly with fashion brands. So if we just unpick this quote slightly. So he starts by talking about his belief that branding is about exposing the soul of the brand. So it's about communicating the essence of the brand, its core DNA, and it's this core value which sticks in the minds of consumers long after they've interacted or purchased the brand. And that's what comes to mind when they think of your product or service again. It's that core DNA, that value that they continue to resonate with. And this is one of the main differences, I suppose, between digital branding and digital marketing. Although the terms are often used interchangeably, digital marketing does tend to be more about sales, whereas digital branding is more focused on those long-term, meaningful, respectful relationships. He then goes on to also draw attention to this two-way dialogue that should take place between the brand and the customer. This should, of course, be on the customer's terms, being there for the customer when they're ready to engage. Although we as marketers, we do tend to emphasize conversation and interaction, it is also important just to remember that not all customers want that active engagement. Some are really quite happy being passive recipients of information. So that comes down to knowing your target market as well. He then goes on to mention digital touch points, and increasingly customers are present on a range of different digital platforms, and a consistent brand message across platforms really helps reinforce your brand identity and solidify who you are as a brand in the mind of your consumers. The online environment, as we know, it's increasingly noisy, and brands, they have to fight for attention. So consistent messaging across both online and offline environments is really important, I think, to try and break through that noise, be heard, and be remembered. So in essence then, online branding, or digital branding as it's often referred to, is about establishing your brand identity online, raising visibility, and achieving credibility in the digital space. It's about sharing your brand story, communicating your brand values, and building long-term relationships online. And unlike traditional branding practices that were very much focused on selling, telling customers what to think, this type of branding is much more subtle, focused on relationship building, working in collaboration with customers to help build your brand together. And I would say the key is to put your customers at the heart of your strategy, continually asking yourself, what do they want? And that's where target market research comes in really useful to help answer this question. Whether this be looking at your target market through social media insights, Google Analytics data, or even more traditional questionnaires, focus groups as well. Ultimately though, it is about being present across a range of digital touch points, making sure that you're in the right place at the right time with the right message, whether that's in search results, social media feeds, your own website. Today, this multi-platform approach, content-driven campaigns are increasingly popular. It's about being easy to be found by your target audience and delivering valuable content. So the Digital Marketing Institute, they have provided this Venn diagram to illustrate how identity, visibility, and credibility all contribute to the practice of digital branding. And I'm going to use this just to talk through some of the key tactics that I think are really useful. So as you can see on screen here, we have a range of digital tactics and channels that can be used to help build and manage our online presence. But by no means is this an exhaustive list, but I hope it's a useful starting point. So for identity-owned properties such as the business's website itself, but also content marketing, social media are particularly useful for building identity online, and we'll take a closer look at these just shortly. In terms of visibility, to enhance visibility, we can make use of shared properties. This could include display advertising on third-party websites, of course, and no matter what size your business is, your ranking in search engines is important to consider. So we're going to look at search engine optimization and just touch upon paid search too. Then lastly, we have credibility. So we can generate credibility through our brand voice or tone, if you like, and our reputation. So we're going to touch on ratings, review sites, and how we can use these to help instill trustworthiness and reliability of our brand. And of course, what others say about your business on social media, that impacts how we're seen. As a brand, credibility can be quite a volatile beast. You can spend years building your credibility, and it can take seconds for it to be ruined. So it's really important to actively build that feedback loop with your target audience to protect your credibility. So what we really want is paid, earned and owned media all working together to help raise visibility, achieve that desired tone of voice, and consolidate the brand in the minds of our consumers. So let's drill down into the different facets just to understand how they can be achieved and how they can be maintained. This will be a fairly whistle-stop tour of these tactics, and do just be aware there are other tactics that can be used, but these are just the key ones that I wanted to touch upon today. So starting with identity then, the business's website is where you have most control over your messaging. You get to decide exactly what is or isn't presented on your website. And when developing a website, there's lots of things to consider that make up a great online brand experience. This includes the visual design, your navigation design, ease of search, even down to how long does it take to download your web pages. Is it optimized for search engines? Is it mobile friendly? Also considering interface design, right down to the use of color, typography, imagery, your logo too. From a brand identity perspective, it's important that the website communicates that brand DNA, what's the core brand essence, clearly communicating the product or services that you offer, but also what does your business stand for beyond the product or service. For example, here on screen, we have the website for Patagonia, which is an American outdoor clothing company. Their brand identity is very much rooted in their commitment to the environment, and it's this messaging that we're met with straight away on their homepage. They have a really good sense of who they are and what they stand for. And the messaging on their website, it really aligns to their mission statement that you can see on screen here too. Writing out a mission statement that captures the business's values, then making sure the website reflects these is a really good way to keep the ship on course, so to speak. But also simple things like making sure your logo is clearly presented to reassure users that they've reached the right place, clear headings so that users can quickly find what they're looking for, using on-brand colors as well, on-brand imagery, really helps with that brand recall and recognition. And what I really like about their homepage, Patagonia, is that you're met straight away with a really strong on-brand call to action. So you can see it there, learn more. Not only does that fit with their educational stance, but it also helps pull people in and get them moving through that customer journey. The website's visuals, written content should also reflect that brand's mission, personality, while also adhering to the desired tone of voice. So continuing with identity, content marketing is a really popular strategic marketing approach today, and it refers to the process of creating but also distributing valuable and compelling content that doesn't overtly sell the brand. So we would call it an inbound approach. I do like to think about content as like a big magnet that pulls people in. It's a much softer approach than some of our traditional techniques, and it's really geared towards entertainment, education, inspiring people, and ultimately engaging audiences. Younger generations, millennial generation in particular, tend not to trust traditional advertising, so content provides a really great way to connect with them in a more relevant way. On the left of the screen, you can see a piece of content by marketing by drinks brand Absolute Vodka. They are currently the leading premium vodka brand in the world, and they very much target the young, fun, quite progressive 20-something consumer. And on their website, you can find, I think, a really nice piece of content marketing. It's a section just dedicated to lots of different cocktail recipes for different occasions. Now, this is really, the content is helpful, it's inspirational, and it's engaging. And of course, all the cocktails, they use Absolute Vodka, but it's not a traditional hard sell. They don't mention price of the product at any point within this piece of content. It's more about informing people how they can use their product in a fun way. Storytelling as well is a really useful technique in content marketing to help engage audiences by telling your brand story. And depending on the type of business you are, which sector you're in, this could be about the location that you're based in. So that's used quite a lot in the Scottish whisky industry, and also the Scottish textiles industry that I've looked at before, using country of origin or place as part of their brand narrative. Yeah, in whisky, they really like to develop a strong narrative about location, right down to the source of their water, their raw ingredients. And this type of story, whether that's about location or the people that work for your company, it's something that's unique about your company, and it can really help differentiate you in competitive markets. I've also got an example here from the oil and gas sector on screen. This is actually my colleague, Brian from RGU here in the blue suit. I hope he doesn't mind me using this. His company that he's set up is, co-founded, is called Safe Influx. And they also use content marketing. They provide a really nice story on their website about how the company was founded, a timeline of key milestones that the business has gone through. And they've got a lovely set of pages that just focuses on introducing each member of their team, so you can get to know them a bit better. There's quite a lot of backstory there about each person. And as a result, I think it makes the company feel very approachable. So content marketing can be really valuable. It can be used to communicate who you are as a brand beyond your product or service that you sell. These are just a couple of examples. It could also include running competitions, quizzes, could be, a lovely interactive infographic, a checklist, a video, interactive demos. These could all be part of your inbound approach. So continuing with identity, social media marketing can be used to connect with your audience in many different ways. It can be a great tool to help build brand awareness in particular and help build your identity. So in the first instance, it can simply be used to make people aware that your business exists so that it becomes part of their consideration set when making a purchase decision. Often today, this is done by working with influencers. These could be local bloggers, journalists, critics, really to help get your brand out there and be seen. So simply to get yourself on the radar of people. Influencers tend to be seen as more trustworthy than traditional celebrity endorsement, so it can also help enhance your credibility too. Or in the whisky industry, as you can see on screen here, they use brand ambassadors to help raise visibility and interact with more specific brand communities based on their geographic location. This way, the corporate brand identity stays quite stable, very controlled and on brand on the corporate account. And then the brand ambassadors, they have pages in those more sort of local communities that they can use to add more of a human touch, more location-specific information to, such as upcoming events in their area. So a slightly different way, so it's not quite influencers, but they're using brand ambassadors, still that human touch. Also using, hashtags, tagging relevant people or businesses in your posts, tagging the location as well. These are all great ways to enhance visibility and be seen on social. Social can also be used to help build relationships with the brand by facilitating meaningful interactions with customers or potential customers, or even a range of different stakeholders. For example, in the whisky industry, they use social media to communicate with a whole host of stakeholders. So focusing on the end consumer, but also other stakeholders, for example, bartenders, as they are seen as gatekeepers to the brand that go on to really influence that final customer purchase in, say, a bar situation. So I would say keep an open mind on social and consider if there are any other stakeholders apart from just the end customer, because we do tend to focus on the end customer, but are there any others that you can build a relationship with? Social can also be used to generate brand advocacy. And this is when customers are willing to promote the brand through positive word of mouth, leaving positive reviews, creating user-generated content on the brand's behalf. And as well as that, often social media is used to nurture these brand advocates, keeping them nice and close to the brand, keeping them happy, keeping them spreading that positive word of mouth. I just wanted to draw a bit more attention to user-generated content. So unlike traditional marketing logic that views brand, the firm and the customer as quite separate and discrete, the customer now has the potential to be actively involved in the brand. So hence the emergence of the term working customer. These working customers are seen to co-create brand identities. This could be completely independently. They themselves might be really very passionate about the brand and just want to be part of the brand, feel closer to it, or they might want to be associated with the brand to try and enhance their own personal identity online. Or it could be that they're responding to, let's say, a competition that's been ran by the brand. So lots of different reasons for customers getting involved with the brand, and it's becoming an increasingly important aspect of social for both businesses and customers alike. Today, you can see there, millennials are reported to spend 30% of their media time engaged with user-generated content, as well as having a preference for viewing user-generated content because it's seen as more reliable, having more authentic qualities. Many users also just simply enjoy creating their own brand-related content. And Airbnb have a user-generated content-led social media strategy, which is hugely beneficial due to the millennial market's preference for this type of content. And it means that the content is continually being created for Airbnb independently for free by real users. So again, seen as authentic and really quite credible. User-generated content can play a really vital role in enhancing and building brand loyalty, improving market penetration, generating positive word of mouth, and generally creating interest in products and services. So now moving on to visibility, how do we make sure our brand is visible online? How do we get ourselves in front of the right people? So repeated interaction across different digital channels helps keep brands front of mind. These repeated interactions are crucial to maintain and develop brand awareness. Digital tactics such as display advertising, social media advertising are really useful ways for brands to maintain contact with customers. Display advertising is interesting to consider because it's a fairly debated tactic due to challenges today with customer blindness to display ads. We're bombarded with information online, and we can quite easily switch off from display advertising. Some consumers even feel that display is quite intrusive, especially display remarketing campaigns that follow you around the web after you've finished visiting a particular website. And of course, that has led this feeling of being sort of intruded or being bombarded, has led to an increased use of ad blockers. So there are definite challenges. However, the cost is relatively low. And although click-through rate can be quite low for display advertising, it is proven to be able to generate quite a lot of visibility for the brand online quite cheaply. And we can do so in a really highly targeted way so that the ads are only being seen by specific audiences. And we can do this at scale in a very automated manner. We can reach large audiences in real time, and in some cases in quite a personal way. You can preset campaigns to target your existing audience or use automated targeting based on your current audience, your real-time audience online. You can also use data from things like your remarketing lists to help you target and engage people who have previously visited your site. I've also added some useful links at the end of my slides, and one of these is to the Google Display Network support pages. So if you're new to display advertising, I would suggest looking at what Google has to say on their about their display network. It's a good place just to start learning more about display advertising. And despite its challenges, from a brand perspective, it really can help keep your brand front of mind and raise awareness. Although text display ads do exist, typically display ads are highly visual in nature. These could even be video. These really help capture the attention of the viewer. If you have a really strong on-brand aesthetic, sort of stands out while your user is browsing another website or their email, for example. This rich, high-quality imagery, good use of colour, clear font, clear messaging are all really important ingredients in display advertising. The value proposition in these ones is nice and clear, and there's a clear call to action. Here we have join now, buy now, read more, learn more. That really helps pull people through to the website as well. So not just generating awareness, hopefully, but hopefully encouraging some to actually click through and go to your website to find out more. So we can't really talk about visibility without mentioning search. Search engine optimization is quite often just simply SEO is a marketing discipline that focuses on raising and growing visibility in organic search engine results, whereas paid search, they are paid for contextual ads that appear in the SERPs, so the search engine result pages. Google operates a pay-per-click model that sees businesses bid on keywords and then paying each time a user clicks on one of their ads. Organic search listings are very competitive and increasingly competitive, I think. Therefore, buying ad space in the SERPs can increase your chances of being seen online. So you're paying for a place in the SERPs rather than earning it through optimization. But Google will only show your ad if it is deemed relevant to the user's search query. SEO, it's quite often described as a game due to the competitive nature of trying to outrank your competitors, and businesses are continually fighting for those top spots in the SERPs. And both on-page, off-page SEO, it should be considered, so both working together. On-page SEO typically focuses on the use of keywords. So which words are appearing on your website, and do these match the user queries that they're typing into the search engine? Off-page is also important. Your rank in search engines is influenced, for example, by the number of credible inbound links, sometimes referred to as backlinks, to your website. If lots of other websites are directing traffic to you, this is a signal to the search engine that you're seen as important or popular, and therefore are more likely to rank you higher. On screen here, I've just broken down a typical results page. I just searched for running shoes, and as you would expect, the first 3 results in this case, so 3-4 results, are paid. At the moment, organic results are always shown below paid results. We also here have Google My Business results, then followed by the organic results. So hopefully this just shows you, how it all works together. Of course, the first page of the results is very sought after, because let's be honest, how often do we really even scroll to the bottom of the first page, let alone move on to the second page of results? So these positions, they are very sought after, and as a smaller business, you can compete, but it can sometimes be hard or sometimes feel impossible to reach these top spots. But it's not impossible, and it does take a lot of work. And one way that I would say, if you're a smaller local business, Google My Business is quite a good approach. If you've not claimed it already, it really does help you gain visibility. It's often situated above the organic listings. It's completely free to claim your listing. All you have to do is set up a business profile with Google. I've placed a link on the final slide so that you can, you can follow it if you want, and you can set up your business profile. And it's just a way to help raise your visibility. And if you're new to SEO or paid search, I'd really recommend checking out the resources that are available by Moz. And again, I've placed a link on that final slide. So we've touched upon credibility throughout this session. When developing brand copy, it's important to think about tone of voice. And the way I like to think about this is, if the brand were a person, what type of personality would they have? Would they be fun, energetic, optimistic, or would they be a bit more serious, technical, detail orientated? By thinking about your brand in this way, it can help bring our brand to life and help facilitate relationships, as it's seen as being a bit more human-like. And if you've got a good understanding of your brand's personality, it can help ensure a bit more consistency as well. If you continually think, right, who am I? How would I speak? It can help with the consistency factor. Finding your own brand voice, your own unique voice, can help you stand out against competitors and can help your brand become more recognizable and easier to recall. Lastly, ratings and review sites. They're not to be underestimated when building your brand online. Many customers turn to review sites like Trustpilot to gain reassurance ahead of making that purchase. So they can play quite a vital role in securing a sale. Customers are more empowered than ever before, which is great. and they can, you know, undertake research and are more willing to undertake research online before buying. They're also more likely, it's been shown, to listen to what other customers have to say about their brand than what maybe the brand has to say about themselves. So these review sites can make or break a brand's reputation. So it's important to understand how you're being represented on these sites, closing the feedback loop where possible, and taking action quickly. I would say, you know, if you've got negative reviews starting to appear, the quicker that they can be dealt with, the better. So I'd like to leave you with this final quote from brand strategist Scott Talgo. He states that a brand that captures your mind gains behaviour, and a brand that captures your heart gains commitment. I really like this because what he is saying essentially is that brands succeed long term when they elicit emotional responses from consumers and invest in building long-lasting relationships. So as promised, I have some hopefully useful links about some of the topics that we've covered today. I realise it's been a whistle-stop tour from display advertising to SEO to content marketing and the website, but hopefully it just gives a good impression of all the different digital touch points that contribute to the online brand experience today. And hopefully these links are useful if you want to follow up on any of these key points too. So I've really enjoyed talking about online branding with you today. I hope you've enjoyed hearing sort of my thoughts on it. And now I'll just hand back to Sarah.
Thank you very much, Christina. That was a really interesting presentation, and I certainly was jotting down a few things myself, even though I'm not looking to develop my own brand right now, but really, really interesting to hear some of your thoughts around what's going on in the world, and you know, even at the start about what's been affecting some of the brands on the back of the current sort of pandemic and the impact that that's had. And you know, you'd expect Netflix and Amazon, etc., to be increasing, but I was quite interested to see that Chanel was also one that was increasing. Do you know why that would be?
Yeah, so Chanel, so luxury purchases, the luxury market does continue to be quite strong, even when spending confidence is down elsewhere. The luxury consumer does tend to sort of hold on to that spending confidence. They're doing quite interesting things, not necessarily with their marketing, but it's more about product segmentation, getting themselves into new markets. And I believe a lot of that growth has actually come from the Asian market. Sort of as they're sort of these countries are developing, higher spending confidence, and then buying luxury products like, you know, your Chanel, but also their counterparts as well tend to be doing quite well in Asian markets at the moment.
That's really interesting. So I've got some questions from the audience, which is great, but please keep sending them through on the Q&A function, and we'll try and get through a few before we finish at 3 o'clock. So I've got a question here from Marion, Christina. So she's saying, great presentation. With regards to your business logo brand, in Scotland we're covered by copyright for logos, etc., but not so much for your brand. Do you advise trademarking your brand with your logo as one package? And then she also says, I know that this can be quite costly for small new businesses, so can you advise whether you feel this is an absolute must in relation to all your startup costs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a really good question. I think, you know, whether you're a small or big business, it's always a concern, copyright. I would say your logo, it is unique to you. I would say it probably is worthwhile for your logo, but things like colours, patterns, typography, it's actually really quite hard. You know, Cadbury's have had an ongoing issue with their colour purple and other brands trying to use it on sort of their packaging. And even big companies really struggle to fight those cases when it comes down to something like a colour or a pattern. But I would say, yes, worthwhile for your logo, but in terms of the other brand elements, I think unless any issues arise, it's probably a cost that you can save yourself.
Perfect, thank you. So I've got an anonymous question. It's sometimes hard to be seen to be new. I'm concerned that I might be thought to be copying someone else when I try to come up with a logo or copy. Do you have any suggestions?
I would say do a reverse image search in Google. So traditionally you would just type in something, a search query into Google. And if you think there is a fear that maybe someone else does have a really similar logo to you, just pop your logo into, actually drag and drop it into the search box in Google and see if that exact logo comes up. But if you've been working on it yourself, it's probably quite unlikely that it will be exactly the same. I would say if it's really similar to a big brand that has a lot of brand equity, whether they would actually reach out and ask you to change it, I'm not sure. But it's always worth just doing a bit of research and just sort of thinking yourself, how similar is this? Have I definitely not copied? And hopefully you can sort of give yourself a little bit of reassurance. And I'm sure you have it and you've come up with it. Or even looking to see whether there is, going to look at, is there intellectual property for that sort of particular style? Maybe it's a typography that you've borrowed from somewhere else. Or an image you've borrowed from somewhere else. So just making sure there's no copyright associated with them as well. But if not, it should be okay.
Yeah, I guess it can be quite easy to do because you can be quite influenced by others and quite like it, and by not meaning to, you can copy something. But that's really helpful advice. Another anonymous question. So user-generated content reviews. What happens when this is negative and detrimental to your brand? How would you suggest managing this?
I always think it's really good if it's something maybe it's the first time your business maybe has a negative review and you've not really dealt with them before. So it's partly getting to know your own target market. How do they like things to be dealt with? And I would suggest actually building up almost like a guideline document internally, just taking note of when you do start responding to negative comments, what has been appreciated, what has been welcomed by your particular target market, or maybe what has actually backfired. Maybe you thought you were calming the situation, putting the fire out, and you just fueled the fire by accident. So I would say, start building up a repository almost of your responses so that you have them on hand, so that you can then quickly respond to any negative comments. Quite often, the quicker that you respond, the better. So just sort of nip it in the bud if you can. And I would say, if it is the first time maybe you've received something negative, just take time to process it. I think it's quite easy to quite quickly send off a response. Show it to people within your business. Is this sort of on brand? Does this fit with our tone? Are you offering a solution as well? I think quite often customers, they want to, if they've got a complaint, they want to first be heard. They want you to understand that their complaint is valid. Because even, it's just even recognizing that they do feel like that. Mm-hmm. And then trying to offer solutions, I think, is just one of the key things when dealing with negative comments. If you can, offer them some sort of solution that's realistic for the company, of course, I think is always good.
Yeah, I think we've all probably seen bad examples when probably maybe smaller companies are have been understandably upset by some negative comments and then have responded in a negative way as well, which is just never going to help
Never try and fight negativity with negativity. It really, I know that's been proven, it just doesn't work. And then you end up, I think the worst thing you can do is end up in a situation where you get into a fight with a customer online. That's just never going to end well for anyone.
No, definitely not. So another question, how to build up followers on Instagram and get people interested in my products, and also to follow my business on Instagram. So what would be your advice for that?
Yeah, so I would say if you've already got an Instagram presence, I've actually found timing of posts really quite important. So I suppose there's a few things. It's trial and error to some degree, but when you're posting, look at your engagement at different times of the day. When is your audience online? And then trying to post when they're online, because then you're more likely to be seen, you're more likely to get those likes, those followers. Building, a bit like tone of voice, building a visual identity that's all adheres to that, a clear tone, a clear vision. And there's lots of apps available to help you do that. One that I've used that I quite like is called Color Story. You can then go in, you can preset a whole range of different filters, and you can just apply it to your images straight away. So then you get quite a consistent look across all your images. It just gives that sort of feel of a bit more credibility, reliability as well. They know what they're getting when they come to your Instagram feed. You can build up a really nice aesthetic that way. And you can then build up quite a lot of images and actually even arrange your feed exactly how you want it, even for a week, 2 weeks in advance, get all your messaging there in place. And then you can set times that you want those to be posted. You still do manually, I think, have to go in and post them though at the moment. And even within some of these apps like Color Story, they'll also help generate hashtags for you if you want. I would say using hashtags is a really useful way, tagging the place that the photo was taken in as well. Really good for increasing your visibility.
Perfect, thanks. Really related to that question, because I was thinking while you were talking that we've got quite a range of different companies listening to us today, different sizes from different sectors. And I'm guessing that not every social media outlet is right for each company or, well, each sector, or it depends what you're trying to sell and who your audience is. What's your advice around that? Is there any that are particularly good for different types of sectors?
Yeah, I would suggest having a presence on, basically be where your target market is. So Pinterest in particular, it's not for everyone. Whereas when you look at their demographic, it's a bit narrower than say Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, Twitter as well. Facebook tends to be used for more information provision. It's really great for local businesses and big businesses alike to provide updates and information more so, run competitions as well. So, whether you're in oil and gas, the whiskey industry, food and drink, I would suggest, Facebook's a good place to provide information to your audiences. And more you're getting people using social sites like Facebook, YouTube as well, like a search engine. So rather than going to Google, they're actually doing their searches in these social media sites. So I would say, for most businesses, Facebook is quite a good place to be.
Yeah.
Even Instagram as well, their audience is expanding, but slightly different type of information, more visual based storytelling, visual storytelling. Or if maybe you're, let's say, in oil and gas or even food and you want to do demonstrations of how your equipment works or how a recipe should be put together, YouTube's a really good place to be too.
Perfect. I mean, it's quite interesting. Last night I was speaking about a restaurant to my husband, and he looked it up on Facebook and said, I can't find it. And I was like, well, I found it by Googling, but he just instantly went to Facebook to look for it rather than Googling. So
yeah, that's happening more and more. So I think that's why it's even more important if social is not something maybe your business has considered before, because maybe it's maybe not seen as really aesthetic. It's maybe not a fashion company or a maybe perfume company, you think, oh, maybe I shouldn't be on Instagram, but actually, you know, if your target market's there, you know, I would say you should be there too.
Thank you. I've got another question from Mark. So he says, many thanks, Christina. Really enjoyed the webinar. Are there specific studies around the ideal amount of text that different kinds of consumers want or expect on websites, etc., to have maximum effect?
Lots of people have their own opinions on this, and there are studies on quite specific things like that, not so much from an academic perspective, but a really good site is Smart Insights. It's a really good, credible industry website. It was founded by Dave Chaffee. He's one of the digital marketing gods of our time right now, and they have lots of industry professionals contributing to their blog. There's a link in one of the PowerPoint slides there to Smart Insights. So I would say check out their resources, but as well, again, it comes down to trial and error. You know, just test out, you know, do shorter posts, do longer posts, use more hashtags, less hashtags, tag the location. Try, you know, for content marketing, try longer infographics, shorter. I would say just really experiment and see what your audience responds to.
Perfect. Another question from the audience, is Pinterest a good way to promote creative products for a small startup brand? And if so, would you go about promoting your products? How would you go about promoting your products and gaining awareness of using Pinterest?
Quite similarly, I suppose, to Instagram, it's about sort of building up a really nice visual page, demonstrating your products. Pinterest, it is more of a lifestyle platform. So you tend to see brands that work quite well there, or maybe not just, you know, let's say it's a homeware company. It's maybe not just a plain, you know, product spec picture of a mug, but it's in, you know, a lovely setting, so people can really get that sort of lifestyle, start to imagine themselves using your product. So I think rich photography works really well on Pinterest. There's also insights as well from Pinterest that helps you understand your followers there, who's engaging with your page. And that'll hopefully tell you as well a little bit about the kind of content that they want, thinking about age. And of course, the great thing about all these insights from social media, you don't only have to use them to help with your social strategies, you can also use them to help with your, you know, your larger business strategy as well. So sometimes it'll flag up to you that actually the people viewing your Pinterest page are not who you thought your demographic was at all. It's maybe a different market. Maybe that's something that you can sort of leverage and capitalize on. So I'm not sure, does that answer the question?
Oh, that's really helpful. Thanks, Christina. And very interesting to think that you could also be thinking about your business planning and things in relation to what your social media demographics is showing you. So that's great. I'm very conscious of the time, and I actually had more questions to ask you myself, but we don't have time to ask them. So thank you so much, Christina. Really enjoyable presentation, and hopefully everyone on the audience has also enjoyed it. Thank you very much for joining us today. The recording of today's webinar will be available on the RGU Knowledge Bites for Business web pages next week. And our next webinar will be on Thursday, the 10th of September, where we'll be exploring how you can use artificial intelligence solutions to inform business decision-making processes within your business. So again, a really interesting topic, which I'm sure will be of interest to many of you. As I've said before at previous ones, it's really important that the Knowledge Bites for Business is meeting your needs. So we really want to hear from you if you have any specific topics that you would like us to cover in the future. So if you do, please do get in touch via knowledgebites@rgu.ac.uk. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you again to Christina, and I hope you all have a great rest of the day.